And one of the ways that you see this is in the difference between a divination journey or a healing journey. A divination journey is where you're going to ask for questions, guidance, help on a situation. And you can be literally told an answer outright, or you can watch a scene that gives you the answer. And that can be a little cryptic. You know, I don't quite understand how this story answers my question, but it's like making sense of a poem or a song lyric. If you wait a day or two, it will pop in. I get it. That's what they were trying to say. So, for example, I had a client once who was getting help on whether to go ahead with a legal case. And I journeyed to a place of answers, looked into the pool of water, and described a Romeo and Juliet type scene where a couple were going to run away and they were betrayed, and she was torn away from him and spent the rest of her life in a nunnery. And he went off and became wealthy and powerful sometime in the 17th century or like that. And neither of us could make sense of this. And I said, well, just sit with it and see what happens. And about 3 mornings later, I woke up and thought, oh my God, I got it. What we were shown was 2 very different ways of living in the world. The woman who went off to the nunnery stayed loving and open and died surrounded by people who loved her and whose lives she had touched. He went off on the road of power and vengeance and sort of getting his own back, and died rich, but lonely and hated. And so that was sort of, to my mind, oh, you know, this person has a choice between 2 very different paths. And about 10 minutes later, they called me up and said, I got it, and described the same conclusion that I had just seen. So a divination journey, the answer will bubble up over time, sometimes years later. I mean, I have a journey that was full of, 9 or 10 different little vignettes. And every so often I read it and I can see how this vignette applies to this part of my life and this one applies to that part. And I'm only about a third of the way through, so there's 2/3 of them that haven't yet come to pass. A healing journey may or may not ever make sense because we're going to ask Spirit to change something on our behalf. And while you go along with them, possibly to partake in it or to observe in the changes, you are in another dimension, working with other than human helpers on other than human levels, using other than human capacities. So they'll represent them as best they can to you. Sometimes the metaphor is obvious. I worked once on my teeth. I didn't want to get a root canal. And so Spirit took me down to a river. We pulled up a rotten old wooden dock and replaced it with nice new stone blocks. Pretty obvious metaphor. But another time, I'm doing a healing for someone, and I'm in outer space, watching an asteroid storm going towards a planet. And my helper makes a big kind of vortex black hole that sucks the asteroid storm so it doesn't hit the planet. I could feel the power of what was happening, but I have no idea where or what that represented in the body of the person the healing was taking place. Another example is I do quite a lot of work on dogs at a distance for clients. And 2 things that are fascinating. One is dogs take on a huge amount of stuff as protectors. So even though we might be asking for help with ticks and fleas, I'll watch my helper, washing the dog's body in some sort of spirit, shampoo. But my power animal could be running around the property, closing gates, chasing snakes out of the garden, digging things out of the earth, and, apparently removing stuff at another level. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question?